Okay, next item on the agenda is item 12, which is an extension of term of office for the independent co-opted member of the Standards Committee. Mr. Evans, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member. We've got two members, independent members of the Standards Committee. Their terms of office are coming to an end at the end of this month. One has asked to have her term extended and one has asked to stand down. So that report suggests that Margaret Williams be appointed for a further term of 4 years. It's a max 10 years you can stand in all. And just to thank Gareth Evans for his work as a Standards Committee independent for the past 6 years. Nothing further to add.
Okay, nobody indicating. Can I have someone to move it, please?
I move.
Thank you. And second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Mr. Evans?
Thank you all. You see the vote in front of you, or if not, it'll be winging its way towards you. Again, I'll give you a moment.
Oh.
Okay, if you have not received it, can you raise your hand and I will go through and take your votes. Raise your virtual hands, please.
Virtual.
Right, who have I got? Councillor Hazel Morris. Councillor Morris.
Muted, Hazel.
4.
4, thank you. Councillor Gordon Walker.
4.
Councillor Penny Matthews.
4.
Councillor Linda Taylor Lloyd.
4.
Thunderbirds characters.
Councillor Mike Lewis.
Very good round for
Councillor Mike Lewis.
the score. So we've got 2 more rounds to go.
No. Councillor Gloria Tanner.
4.
8 points. Very well done.
Mike, muted if you're there.
Councillor Lewis, Mike Lewis. You're muted.
Yeah, I did vote.
You've raised your hand.
Did I? I must have pushed it by mistake, sorry.
That's okay. Anybody else unable to go? Councillor Sullivan, are you raising your hand? No. Okay, so that's everybody. Oh, Councillor Tanner, are you raising your hand again? No.
I'm just trying to get rid of it.
I've turned it off now. Thank you. Anybody else unable to vote? Okay, I'm going to close the poll then. And I can safely say that is as the recommendation is outlined.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 13 is the Council Body's Diary for 2021-2022. Mr. Evans.
Nothing to add to the report other than to say this just gives us a framework to work towards for May onwards. It allows us to plan for future meetings. Obviously, it's subject to change and it will be the annual council that makes the final decision for the diary.
Okay.
So, nothing to add.
Okay, the recommendation is that it's adopted. Somebody move, please.
I'll move it.
Move.
Yes, second.
Happy second.
Thank you.
Thank you all. The vote should be winging its way towards you there. It's on my screen, so it should be on your screens very shortly. Again, I'll give you a moment for it to travel. The vote, I can see the vote is still coming in nicely. Okay, was anybody unable to vote? Gordon Walker?
Bob.
Anybody else?
Me, Linda,
Who's me, sorry?
Linda, Tyler Lloyd.
Okay. And how are you voting, Linda?
At 4.
Okay. Anybody else unable to vote? No? Excellent. I shall close that poll then. Give me a moment. Thank you. And that is unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 14, scrutiny annual report 2019-2020. Councillor Peter Black, please, for information. Peter.
Thank you, Chair. I formally submit it for information.
Nobody indicating they wish to speak. Any questions? No? Okay, that's submitted for information. Thank you, Peter. That takes us to item 15 and the notice of motion on the public sector pay award. And to move the notice of motion, Councillor Clyde Lloyd. 5 minutes, Clyde.
Yeah, thank you, Presiding Member. Listen, I know it's been a long meeting, but I think this is a really important motion, and I'm sure there are other members who want to come in. I know that a lot of members, when they're moving motions, start with the words that they're really happy to be bringing this a particular motion, but I have to say that I'm absolutely appalled that I have to, and my group have to bring this motion to Council tonight. Can I first start by saying I'm absolutely amazed at the timing and the of the announcement made by the Chancellor and the lack of compassion shown in the timing, which was back around October or November last year, where we were just about to go into the height of the second wave of the pandemic, when the Tories reverted to type and almost couldn't hold themselves back by stating that the public sector are the first people to bear the brunt of any repaying of the monies that the Chancellor may have spent in terms of tackling this pandemic. What we didn't know back in October, November, was how the pandemic was to get worse through in December, where our frontline workers, all the workers that all members of the public, wherever they're employed and whatever sections they are, turn to at the first opportunity to help them get through this pandemic, whether that be waste collectors, whether that be teachers, whether that be our test and trace teams, our enforcement officers. Every single one of them have been heroes through this pandemic. We heard tonight about the work that our homelessness officers in a housing department have done, being on the front line, getting out there and making sure that some of our most vulnerable people have been helped during this pandemic. I would, of course, say, and I have informed members on regular occasions about the fantastic work of our social work teams in particular, particularly in adult social care, where we have seen the work that they've had to endure in making sure that our care homes continue to operate, our domiciliary care staff continue to look after some of our most vulnerable people. And they would have heard the presentation given by Mr. Howes, the Director of Social Services, and the heads of service, who talked with passion about the work that our care home managers and their staff had to endure. First-hand experiences of people on the front line, showing dedication, showing courage beyond the call of duty, and on many occasions going into work not knowing what they would be facing, whether they would be at risk of contracting coronavirus themselves. So I have to say that as I watched the politicians stand on their doorstep of 10 Downing Street and other locations throughout the UK, clapping these very same people. The last thing I expected was the Chancellor of the Exchequer of the United Kingdom government to slap them straight in the face by announcement that they would be the first to bear the brunt of a pay freeze to pay for the pandemic. Be no under any illusions. The Chancellor himself is already forecasting that there's a risk that inflation may rise. So this is absolutely an attack on living standards. At the same time as billions have been wasted on a failed test, track and trace system by the UK government, procurement law has been broken, and we've had contracts handed out to paths willy-nilly by the Health Secretary. This isn't levelling up. This isn't a levelling up agenda. Now, there is just, I've heard the Chancellor say that the justification for the public sector pay freeze is to pay for the cost of the pandemic, but also those in the private sector and the self-employed, they won't be receiving a pay rise. So what I would say is, Chancellor, give more support to those sections, but let's not create a race to the bottom. We've been down this road before. Not other sections of the working population not having a pay rise is no justification not to reward our public sector. Learn the lessons of the last 10 years, the 10 years of austerity that we saw through first of all the coalition and carried on through to the Cameron and Theresa May administration, where we saw year-on-year freezes in public sector pay. What did that created in our society? Don't take my word for it. Go and look at a recording of the big questions from a week ago last Sunday, where Professor Sir Michael Marmot outlined 10 years of austerity and what that will impact, what the impact of that has been. Record inequality, record in work poverty, record child poverty, and record numbers of food banks being increased. So Chancellor is already stating his aims to use austerity once again to pay for this pandemic. I say no. Give people in the public sector a proper pay rise, create growth, create wealth, and that will itself help to pay for this pandemic. Given the public sector the pay rise they deserve, particularly this year, is absolutely the right thing to do. And I'm sure nobody in whatever sector of the economy that they're employed would begrudge those people a reward for all the hard work and the risk that they've undertaken and continue to do week in, week out. So all I would say is, in conclusion, presiding member, these people deserve the pay rise, and I ask everyone with any ounce of sincerity and thanking of these sections of the workforce to support this motion tonight.
Lloyd is seconded.
Yes, Chair, if I could come in to second.
Do you want to speak now or reserve your?
Chair, I think I should probably go next as a formal seconder.
Yeah, you can speak now, or you can reserve the right to speak later if you wish.
Whichever your chair of the meeting, Chair, I'm happy to go whenever you say.
It's your choice.
I'll wait until a bit later on then, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So Chris Holly.
Thank you very much, presiding member. I think Councillor Clive Lloyd is absolutely right. Nobody should take pleasure in this notice of motion. You know, I have to declare a personal and prejudicial interest, but it's not for me that I declare that interest. I declare that interest for the people that are on the nurses, the doctors, and our frontline social services staff. But then, you know, the reality of life is we have discovered through this pandemic what really matters, who matters, and how they matter. We have seen that it doesn't really matter if you're a celebrity television star. It doesn't make any difference if you're a very well paid sports star. The people that have cared for us, the people who have served in the hospitals, the frontline ambulance workers, the social workers, and the care workers in our care homes and our domiciliary care workers. They are the people that are mattered. And to then turn around and, you know, just give them a clap, I think is an insult, not just to those people. I think it's an insult to our society. It's an insult to the people who have had loved ones who have lost partners or family members. I think it's an insult right across the board. And I sincerely hope everyone in this, on this call tonight, will actually support this notice of motion. I am more than happy to put my name to this. And I know that everyone in the group will do the same, because we know the value of the people that have cared for us during this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, right, Councillor Leslie Bolton. Sorry, Councillor Lyndon Jones has just put his hand up. Lyndon?
Yeah, thank you, presiding member. Yeah, I like everyone, I recognise the tremendous work done by people in the public sector during the course of the pandemic. But in replying, I would also like to thank the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, on behalf of the thousands of people in Swansea he has supported on the furlough scheme, because without this, many would be out of work and the economy of Swansea would be decimated. Also for the support he has given to all those businesses across Swansea, providing money for the field hospital, and the 5.8 billion package of support he has given to Wales. And I hope everybody in this council meeting will join me in thanking Rishi for that support, because it is probably more support than any Chancellor of the Exchequer in history has given Swansea, and I think we should recognise it. What the Chancellor has said is that frontline NHS staff will get pay rises, and public sector workers earning less than £24,000 will also get pay rises, and so they should. Absolutely, so they should. However, it is a fact that would appear to have been overlooked in this motion, that under the devolution settlement, it allows the Welsh Government to determine pay conditions and rises for much of the Welsh public service sector. So I hope that the Cabinet have spoken to the Welsh Government Finance Minister to ask her to fund the pay awards you are suggesting. As we all know, when money is given by the UK Conservative government to Wales as part of the Barnett formula, the Welsh Government determines where the money is spent or wasted, like the £52 million on to nationalise Cardiff Airport, the 144 million on plans for the M4 relief road, the road to nowhere. But also, when money is spent in England under the Barnett consequentials, Wales get it as well. And they recently had a share, or about a year ago, a share of 1.24 billion for education. And I did write to the Welsh Government Finance Minister, and she could not guarantee that the money would be spent on education. So there is money there if they want to use it. So the money is there for the Welsh Government to determine how it is spent. So as I've already mentioned, the terms of the devolution settlement, which allows the Welsh Government to determine pay, conditions and rises for much of the Welsh public sector, have you been in touch with the Welsh Government Finance Minister to ask her to fund the pay award as suggested? Because that is where your letter should be going, unless you were simply trying to play politics. However, if we are going to send a letter to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, it would also be appropriate for you to thank him on behalf of the people of Swansea about the furlough scheme, as I've mentioned, the businesses he supported throughout Swansea during this pandemic, and not least for today's announcement of the £5.4 million per year from 21-22 for the remaining 7 years of the city deal, which the leader of the council announced earlier. So yeah, I would make those comments. Obviously, it's important for that we remember the work of the people in the public sector. But as I say, I'm pleased that it's been recognised that the NHS workers and people on less than £24,000 will be getting that pay rise.
Thank you. Councillor Kevin Griffiths.
Yes, thank you, Presiding Member. I totally agree with all the comments that have been made this evening on this subject. And as an NHS worker, and on behalf of all my colleagues, how disappointed we are in the decision to give us nothing for putting our lives on the front line. Also, all other frontline workers were also disappointed in the result. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Leslie Walton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'd like to comment on what I think is one of the Tories' usual very clever trick of divide and rule, when they keep chucking up the proposal that this would not affect anybody in the private sector. But let's face it, why are these jobs, any of them, in the private sector? That is because that's exactly what the Tories have been doing for decades. So to use that argument is so disingenuous. It's absolutely wrong, because none of those jobs should be in the private sector. People should not be profiting for doing jobs that take care of others. It should be a non-profit making service. So let's stop talking about how compare with the private sector, and let's concentrate on making sure all those staff who have worked their socks off, and basically let's not also forget all those staff who are now no longer with us because of the work they did. Let's make sure they get the pay rise they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kerry Evans.
Yes, thanks, Presiding Member. Obviously, I'm speaking in favour of this motion, and I fully support everything that Councillor Clive Lloyd said, and then what Chris Hawley so passionately expressed as well. And although I didn't enjoy the mealy-mouthed, if I might call it that, response from the leader of the Conservative Party in the council, really, I think if we're going to, in the process of thanking Tory chancellors, we may as well thank successive Tory chancellors for increasing child poverty, for increasing homelessness, for making food banks as common as the supermarkets, for increasing in-work poverty exponentially while we're at it, I think. We all know that public sector, particularly social care staff and both children's services and adult services, have borne the brunt of public sector, salary freezes over the past 10 years. And they're the very people who cared for the most sick during this pandemic. In lots of cases, and Councillor Leslie Watt touched on this, many of those social care workers working for private sector companies where they can enjoy no costs for travel expenses, no pay during lunch hours, and on and on. Their terms and conditions are absolutely appalling, basically. And so I think it's only right that those workers, public sector workers and social care workers particularly, get paid in a way that's equivalent to the work that they do for our society, really. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kerry. Councillor Mark Child.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It's a topsy-turvy world, isn't it? The key workers, the people we value most, are amongst the poorest paid. It's bizarre. It doesn't make sense, and it's shown how poorly paid many of them are. But despite that, they have gone in and risked a lot and worked well beyond their terms and conditions, and not knowing the risks that they were taking in social care and many other areas. And I think we need to be showing them gratitude. I know the social care workers received a bonus from the Welsh Assembly of £500 earlier on, but I also know that the chair of the head of the Conservative group in the council knows that The Barnett consequential means that if there is no pay increase going to the vast majority of key workers from from the UK government, the money doesn't come through to enable it to happen here. And I know he said the from education, they say they would be spending it all. I bet they didn't say they'd be spending more than that either. They just didn't answer your question, probably because the pointless politicalisation of it. I imagine that you didn't actually say that you supported Chancellor's decision on not paying many of the key workers the amount that they were due. You just said he paid some of them. So I'm not sure whether you're 100% behind him anyway, Councillor Jones. But clearly, we have underpaid people in the care sector, and probably others as well, but people in the care sector for a long time now. They are well behind their equivalent carers in the NHS. And our carers are probably better paid than a lot of the private sector carers that are out there anyway, who also deserve a pay rise, but the money won't be coming through for that, I doubt. I support this. I can't imagine why anybody wouldn't think that on this year of all years, that we should not be supporting these key workers, public sector workers, or not just the poorest. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the poorest, but all of them, because they've all done the same amount of work. They've all put in the same risk. They've all worked just as hard, dedicated, and all deserve it. This year, I'm 100% behind Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Mark. Councillor Philpott.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I have been a little disappointed about the political rhetoric that has accompanied this very important notice of motion. There is a substantive core within this notice of motion, which is the public sector workers that not only are being undervalued by a pay freeze, but are generally undervalued anyway. We do hear about the nurses, the teachers, the care workers, but part of the notice does mention refuse workers, public health workers. I know that our public health department, from an anecdote, has had 60+ calls every day. Do we ever think about that section of our council? Do we think about the refuse workers? Have we ever seen piles of rubbish laid out on the road during this last year? No, we haven't. There might have been the odd 1 or 2 pockets that have been cleared up really pretty quickly. But those workers have continued to go out and do their job. The same as parks and all of the other frontline services that get very, very little mention, if ever. But they and their supervisors, and as one of our colleagues on the council has said, it doesn't matter what part of the council you work for, you've had an input into the way that the city has been supported. And I think that that is the important issue here, that we value those people. Forget the political rhetoric. Let's just say we value those people financially and also by the rhetoric of thanks. Does anybody ever say thank you? And that, I think, is what's important, and not who did this and who said that and what happened 10 years ago. It's what's happened in the last year, the comment that was made about the pay freeze at the most inappropriate time, and how we take it forward. And even if Mr. Sunak changes his mind tomorrow, I would still be putting my name to this motion to support it, because I think it is absolutely the right thing to do for all of the public sector workers who worked so hard to keep this city and country going. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald. Councillor Paxton Williams.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Let me start first of all by saying I think it is very sad that the movers of this motion are prepared to play political games with the livelihoods of our staff. Do the movers of this motion really think that a letter from the Swansea City Council is going to have a material effect? I think even they would consider that to be unlikely. However, if the controlling group really does want to do something to improve the pay of our staff, to reflect the efforts that they made during the course of the pandemic, they can potentially actually achieve that. Every one of us as councillors will agree that the staff of our council have done a magnificent job. I've said it a number of times myself within scrutiny meetings. But you will recall, presiding member, that in recent years, this council has completed and implemented a job evaluation and equal pay agreement with the unions representing our staff. In the passage of time, as you will well know, jobs change, new jobs appear, which will require that jobs are re-evaluated to take account to these changes. There obviously has to be in place a mechanism for maintaining the job valuation system. Obviously, as the motion suggests, the main impact on our staff has been on a comparatively long-term redeployment situation, where that has been necessary, and a potential increased health and safety risk. There might well be other factors as well. In respect to these things, obviously those could be built into a job evaluation, so I see no reason if the Cabinet can put this motion forward, which is simply to send a letter, because that's what it says. The leader of the council, Swansea Council, write a letter to the Chancellor's Exchequer. I see no reason why the Cabinet cannot also take a decision that requires HR management to re-evaluate job scores, taking those factors I've already mentioned into account, and see where that goes in that respect. Thank you, presiding member.
Councillor Miles Langston.
Thank you. I just, in response to this motion, just want to echo many of the points raised by my colleague Lyndon, particularly our thanks to the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, for the extensive support that he's offered to the people of Swansea throughout the pandemic through the furlough scheme, the self-employed support scheme, many avenues of business support, and for the £5.85 billion of additional COVID support the UK government has provided to the Welsh Government to respond to the pandemic. I think, as Lyndon pointed out, the motion conveniently ignores the devolution settlement, which allows for the Welsh Government to determine pay, conditions and rises for much of the Welsh public sector. And therefore, I must ask, why is it that where Labour and the Lib Dems have power over the Welsh Government at a Welsh Government level to implement what you're asking for today, you've not done so? Clearly, through, as I've stated, the huge sums of money that have been given to the Welsh Government on top of the Barnett formula, which delivers £120 for every £100 spent in England, the money is not used in this way as they'd like to see, but instead is sadly wasted by the Welsh Government. So I would reiterate that in recognition of the incredible role of frontline NHS workers, and obviously we're incredibly thankful for everything that they've done throughout the pandemic, they will be receiving a pay rise from the UK government, and public sector workers earning below £24,000 will also be receiving a pay increase to ensure that those on the lower wages will be supported. So frontline NHS staff are getting a pay increase. Those earning under £24,000 in the public sector are due to get a pay increase. And unfortunately, this motion is nothing more than the Labour Party simply trying to play politics with people's livelihoods.
Councillor Alison Peel.
Yes, thank you, presiding member. I would like to say that as a nurse of 35 years now in May, I would like to support this motion, and it is very sad that we have to bring this forward. And as a mother who spent a fraught few days last week in Morriston Hospital, in an extremely busy hospital, you know, I think I speak on behalf of, you know, the parents, but colleagues as well across the country. And you know, as nice as it was, the people stood on the doors and they clapped and everything, it's not really what we need, is it? It's not really what we want. And, you know, even as a councillor, residents in my ward are very much part of the working poor. So when, as good as it is that we got a furlough scheme, it is still 80% of minimum wage. We are still in dire straits poverty-wise. And therefore, you know, I won't be thanking no Conservative Chancellor for what he's done, because I thank God I live in Wales, because it's the only protection that we've got from the Welsh Government and from the leaders here in Swansea Council and all the officers. I thank everybody for their support, because it most certainly doesn't now and never has come from the Tory government.
Thank you, Alison. Councillor Mary Sherwood.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I find it absolutely astonishing to hear Conservative members of this council accuse us, movers of this motion, of playing politics with people's livelihoods, when that's precisely what the Tory government has been doing since 2008. And it seems that, again, we have to spell this out. There is no additional funding coming to Wales for a public sector pay rise. There is no Barnett consequential for Wales if there is no funding for the same thing going out in England. So it's not like the Welsh Government has got money to give everyone a public sector pay rise, and it's not like we in Swansea Council have got the resources to do that either, unless it's decided by central government. Now, recently I had the pleasure of listening to Sir Michael Marmot on the radio, and he said, why is it that England, the UK, in fact, the whole UK has suffered so badly through this COVID pandemic? And he talked about 10 years of underfunding public services. And his exact quote was, you can't get away with defunding public services for a decade and then expect to be in a good place to manage the next pandemic. And defunding public services is what is happening now when people aren't being given a decent pay rise. Now, I know we're talking about COVID, we're talking about the impact on key workers. As Councillor Pugh has mentioned, clapping on the doorstep does not help people. If you search the internet, you find NHS workers pleading with people to stop calling them heroes, because being thrown into the front line and martyred against their will is not what they signed up for. They signed up for a job that they could be proud of with a salary to match, and that's not what they're getting. And this evening at 9 o'clock on BBC One, there is going to be a documentary looking at why Black and minority ethnic people are dying more from COVID. And one of the findings that will be explored in this programme is their role as frontline key workers. So yes, the pandemic is relevant, and people's performance and how grateful we are to them is relevant. What about everybody else in the public sector who's just kept things ticking over for years and years and years, facing a real terms pay freeze yet again, because the fifth richest nation on the planet has a government that doesn't think they're worth investing in? I think it's absolutely disgusting. It is reinforcing inequality in people who we should be investing in, and it is starving the economy of spending money and tax revenues that should be oiling the wheels. I'm disgusted by it, I'm disgusted by the comments of our Conservative colleagues. I wholeheartedly support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jen Rayner.
Thank you, Chair. I will be supporting this motion. I think it is long overdue. We've had 10 years of austerity where public sector workers have been squeezed and squeezed. Cheryl Philpott is quite right. Our workforce has been fantastic. It's been flexible. It's prepared to work long hours in very challenging circumstances. There has been no mention of, oh, I'm a social worker, I can't do that, or I'm a bin man, I'm only able to do bins. This has been a fantastic team effort. And what is their reward? Nothing. Unless they are in that group, thankfully we haven't got many of them in Swansea, who earn under 24k. I am shocked at what Lyndon Jones says, and even, well, no, I'm not shocked, because the boy's got no knowledge of economy, of the would-be councillor for Gower, if he should, well, God forbid he ever gets any votes in that election, saying we're wasting it. We're wasting the money. At not one education scrutiny committee has he put his hand up and come up with any criticism or alternatives. In fact, I am constantly surprised that the Conservatives still present themselves as the people of business and sound economics, when clearly they cannot tell the difference between a pay rise, a furlough system. Do they understand what furlough is? how much you would get paid depending on what job it is. A brilliant scheme, so brilliant that Posh Spice can use it, but somebody working locally might only be supported for a few hours a week. We have a system where we are now dependent on the Supreme Court to take on the gig economy because Rishi and his chums think that's just showing entrepreneurial spirit, which is screwing everybody for as much as you can get. It is absolutely outrageous to say, let's not ignore what this motion says, which addresses the low pay of public sector workers who have performed over and above anything any of us imagined, with a furlough scheme which does not do the same job for the same people. And as to the ongoing lack of understanding about national pay awards, devolution, the Barnett formula, once again, the Conservatives show their complete lack of understanding. They are not the party of efficient business. They are a self-seeking bunch who know nothing. Happy to sit down with them and give them an economics lesson, but this is really not acceptable from them. We have a really good motion here supporting our workers. Lyndon likes to write letters off to schools congratulating them. Does he write saying catering staff, cleaning staff, teaching assistants? Sorry, you can't have a pay rise. Carry on flogging yourself to death, but no pay rise, because I don't support it. When he puts that letter out to our lowest paid workers, I might be impressed, but not today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Irene Mann. Irene. Is there, Irene? Are you muted?
On hold. So I think she's left. You know, she's on hold. She can't hear us.
No. Okay. Can we call Rob Stewart then, who's seconding the motion? Councillor Rob.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I appreciate you allowing me to second at the end of the debate. I'm absolutely astonished, but not surprised by some of the nonsense coming out of the Conservative members. How they can justify their positions and their statements this evening is beyond me. You know, Councillor Paxton Hood-Williams suggesting that we embark on a job evaluation and grading review as some sort of way of fixing this. He does realise that it took the last administration 6 or 7 years to complete that process. I mean, is he suggesting that key workers should wait that long to get a decent pay award? It's outrageous. Then a number of the Conservatives have talked about the Barnett formula and the devolution agreement. Well, you can only hand out money that you have received. That is the position that the Welsh Government finds itself in. If the UK Government decide to remove pay awards, that means that the Welsh Government does not have the funding in order to then pass that money on. And I'm pretty sure if Rishi Sunak tomorrow reinstates the pay award for key workers and public sector workers, and that money flows to the Welsh Government, it will be passed on so that public sector workers in Wales can receive it. And we certainly as a council would be passing that on. You know, as been mentioned as well, the Welsh Government have already gone over and above what UK Government have offered out. The business support package, for instance, in Wales is far more comprehensive than it is in any other nation of the UK, including England. Welsh Government announced a £500 payment for social care workers and those involved in social care, and requested that the UK Government do the decent thing and not tax or charge national insurance on that payment. What did the Tories do? They taxed it. That's what they did. So they took money off key workers after the Welsh Government had given it to key workers. That's what the Tories stand for. And let's not assume that this was part of a package of helping everybody repay the debt that we've accumulated whilst we've helping through people through the COVID crisis. This was the single and only action taken by the Tories. They didn't go after the millionaires, they didn't go after the billionaires, they didn't go after the sponsors, they didn't go after those evading tax. What did they do? They went after the key workers. They went after the public sector workers first. Why? Because that is where they see an easy target. So I'm appalled but not surprised. I am going to invite all of the group leaders to co-sign this letter with me. I am very happy as leader of this council to write that letter in the strongest terms possible. And I do hope that those leaders will sign the letter with me. I'm quite happy for Councillor Holly, Councillor May and Councillor Jones to give an answer this evening, whether they wish to sign the letter. And I would say as well, Councillor Langston trotted out a number of figures. Well, he's got a choice, because I understand he's got aspirations in the Senedd to represent area of Gower. Well, if Councillor Langston really wants to stand up for the people of Gower, can he say tonight whether he's on the side of key workers or whether he's on the side of the Tory party denying them a fair pay rise? Simple answer, yes or no. So where do you stand, Councillor Langston? Let's hear from you. And I do invite my other leader colleagues to let me know whether they're prepared to sign the letter, which I'm quite happy to write and issue out tomorrow.
Thank you, Leader. And Councillor Clive Lloyd, please put out the sum to minute, Clive.
Yeah, thanks, Presiding Member. Listen, there's been so many red herrings from the Conservative group tonight. I'm expecting to see a load of Cornish fishermen sailing into Swansea at any time soon. But listen, the leader has answered most of the points, and I'm not going to repeat them. But I think, you know, Councillor Philpott is right. Whatever we say and whatever we do, and hopefully we'll pass this motion tonight. We, as councillors and the people of Swansea, owe these key workers a huge amount of gratitude and debt. And whatever money comes forward, we can never, ever repay them for what they've done for the people of Swansea. All the people, all the key workers, all those working in the council, Swansea owe you, and we should never forget that. So I would ask that everyone supports this motion tonight. And Chair, I would request that we move a name vote if that's possible.
Okay. Right, I've got, because they've been invited now to come back in, I'm bound to allow Councillor Chris Longley to.
I'll be very brief, Chairman. I'm more than delighted to sign that letter. I'm just sad that I've got to do it.
Okay, thank you. And who's the other one? Councillor Peter May. Councillor May.
Thank you. Yeah, of course I'll sign it, Councillor Stewart.
Lyndon, do you want it now as a group leader? No.
Silence. I think the silence says it all, Chair.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. It's been moved.
Didn't say it all, Presiding Member, at all. I heard that. The point I made is, had the leader asked Welsh Government for the money before.
It was a yes or no that was asked
very
for.
clear, because there is money available. Because they get money, they need to decide what they spend it on. That's called devolution. You can't want devolution, and in fact, home rule, as your leader in Wales is now saying, without taking some responsibilities. Don't try and pass it on to other people all the time.
Point of order, Chair. Point of order, Chair.
Can he just say yes or no?
Well, I will be responding to the leader.
Sorry, somebody's raised a point of order. What's the point of order?
Point of order is you are allowing now somebody to come back in to talk again when he was invited to give a yes or no whether he would answer, not listen to other diatribe again.
Yeah. Okay, I accept your point. I mean, it's unusual for us to come to this position anyway after a notice of motion has been responded to, but the leader invited Councillor Holly and Councillor May, the other group leaders, and Councillor Lyndon Jones is a group leader, so I had to offer him the this.
It was a point of order, was a yes or no, which was
Yeah.
requested.
It was a request for a yes or no, Lyndon. I'm not sure.
I'll be writing to the. I'll be emailing the leader.
Okay. Right.
And I hope to. Yeah, there we are.
Okay.
I look forward to your putting your signature on.
Okay, councillors, I can see in the chat box a few people have asked for a named vote. Clearly, our constitution means 10 people have got to stand. So I think
yes.
So if I
Everyone.
get 10 virtually raised hands.
Yes, happy to stand.
I'm just watching them come in there. Well, that's fine. On the back of that, I will take the named vote. You can all lower your hands. Thank you. Usual protocol. I will read out your name. Please say whether you're for the notice of motion, against, or if you're abstaining. So for, against, or abstain. Cyril Anderson.
100% for.
If you could keep it
Just
to a for, against, please, or abstain. Peter Black.
Things were short when
June Burtonshaw.
For.
Mark Child.
For.
I'm just going to mute people. Someone's got unmuted here. There we go. Mark Child was for, sorry. John Curtis.
For.
Nick Davis.
For.
Mike Day.
For.
Phil Downing.
For.
Ryland Doyle.
For.
Mike Dirk. Kerry Evans.
For.
Mandy Evans.
For.
Will Evans.
For.
Wendy Fitzgerald.
That's just the sort of meal that I like when I'm really hungry. So I'm going to get stuck in.
Wendy Fitzgerald.
For.
Okay. Robert Francis Davis.
For.
Delicious, wonderful.
Steve Gallagher.
Abstain.
Louise Gibbard.
For.
Fiona Gordon.
For.
Kevin Griffiths.
For.
Joe Hale. Councillor Hale.
To meet Kirsty, who gets the pick of the local catch.
David Helliwell.
Abstain.
I have. Very nice to meet you. All the locals have said.
Terry Hennigan. Terry, I'm sorry, yeah. Chris Holly.
For.
Catherine Williams.
Oops. Abstain.
Every day for you.
Can I ask you to radio on the background?
You've got a radio here. We
Mute, sorry. There we go. Councillor Beverly Hopkins.
For.
Councillor David Hopkins.
For.
Councillor Oliver James.
For.
Councillor Linda James. Councillor Linda James. Councillor James. No. Okay. Councillor Yvonne Jardine.
For.
I'll go down to the pier, see what he's got, and then we'll cook them.
Councillor Jeff Jones. Councillor Lyndon Jones.
Abstain.
Councillor Mary Jones. Councillor Peter Jones.
Straight from the sea. What is this, the catch of the day?
It is indeed. I was out this morning, nice and early.
These are locusts.
Councillor Peter Jones.
Real nice condition.
For.
Delicacy on the way.
Councillor Sue Jones.
For.
Councillor Elliot King.
4.
Councillor Erica Kirshner.
For.
Councillor Miles Langston.
Abstain.
Councillor Andrea Lewis.
For.
Councillor Mike Lewis.
For.
Councillor Richard Lewis. Councillor Wendy Lewis.
For.
Councillor Clive Lloyd.
For.
Councillor Paul Lloyd.
For.
Councillor Irene Mann.
For.
Councillor Penny Matthews.
For.
Councillor Peter May. Councillor Hazel Morris.
For.
Councillor David Phillips.
For.
Councillor Cheryl Philpott.
For.
Councillor Sam Pritchard.
For.
Councillor Alison Pugh.
For.
Councillor Jen Briner.
For.
Councillor Christine Richards.
For.
Councillor Kelly Roberts.
For.
Councillor Bridget Rowlands.
Abstain.
Councillor Mary Sherwood.
For.
Councillor Paulette Smith. Councillor Robert Smith.
For.
Councillor Andrew Stevens.
For.
Councillor Rob Stewart.
For.
Councillor Gareth Sullivan. Councillor Gareth Sullivan. He's gone. Councillor Moore Sykes. No. Councillor Gloria Turner.
For.
Councillor Des Thomas.
For.
Councillor Graham Thomas. Councillor Mark Thomas.
For.
Councillor Will Thomas. Councillor Linda Taylor Lloyd. Councillor Linda Taylor Lloyd. No. Councillor Gordon Walker.
For.
Councillor Leslie Walton.
For.
Councillor Mike White.
For.
And I've just had a message that I can see that Councillor Linda James's mic is playing up, so she's voting for as well. The only other councillor I missed was Councillor Linda Taylor Lloyd. No, she is left.
Mike Dirk.
Mike's not here. No, Mike's absent. Okay, so the result is 52 for, 0 against, with 6 abstentions. So 52 with 6 abstentions.
Okay, that's the result of the notice of motion. That concludes our agenda for this evening. Thank you all for your attendance. See you again on Thursday. Okay, good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Presiding member.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Bye.